Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are jumping straight into a high-tech, high-stakes domain that you probably interact with every single day without even realizing it. We're talking about map law. Back in the day, collecting and managing geographic data was basically a total monopoly. It was tightly controlled by the state or the military. But today, geodata and maps are literally everywhere. They're massively valuable economic assets, and with that kind of value comes a highly complex, almost forensic level of digital security and legal regulation. So we're going to investigate the invisible legal tripwires hidden inside modern cartography. Seriously, it's a real question. Think about it for a second. Have you ever just right-clicked a map on a website, saved it, and dropped it right into a presentation? Or maybe you took a quick screenshot of a digital map and uploaded it to your personal public blog just to show off your latest hiking route? Well, if you have, you might actually be guilty of cartographic theft. In our digital landscape, illegally using a map is incredibly easy, it's incredibly common, and as you'll see today, it's increasingly heavily policed.
All right, let's get right into Section 1. Who owns a map? We're going to define the legal boundaries here. Okay, let's dive into this crucial legal dichotomy because this is the foundation of everything. First, you have raw geodata. These are just the hard, unprotected facts of the real world, like the exact coordinates of a mountain peak or exactly how long a river is. You can't copyright a fact. But cartographic design, that specific, creative, visual encoding of the data using signs, colors, and generalization, that is completely different. The law recognizes that as a personal, intellectual creation, and that is exactly what gets legally protected. To really ground this, let's look at actual legal text. We're using Section 2 of the German copyright law, or ERGI, which is actually a really great baseline for overarching European law principles. The law explicitly says that representations of a scientific or technical nature, such as drawings, plans, maps, sketches, are protected works. Basically, the very moment a cartographer brings their personal, intellectual creation to life, whether they draw it by hand or build it in software, it's legally shielded. And it doesn't even matter if you're drawing it from scratch or following specific drawing instructions. It is protected. Now, what's really fascinating here is that this legal umbrella is way wider than just traditional drawn maps. Have you ever used a satellite image from a search engine? Well, those are legally protected as photographs. And what about the underlying raw data structures we just talked about? So while raw data itself isn't protected, there was actually a 2015 ruling by the Court of Justice of the European Union that confirmed the structuring, creation, and maintenance of digital and analog map databases absolutely are protected. The whole structural matrix of the map is a protected asset.
And let me tell you, this protection is no joke. We are talking about a 70-year lifespan. Specifically, copyright protection expires a full 70 years after the death of the cartographer or the longest living co-author. For aerial and satellite images, it's 50 years. You can't just sell this right off willy-nilly either, though it can be inherited or formally transferred to authorities and companies. Make no mistake, this is a long-lasting, serious legal lockdown on geographic visuals.
Moving on to Section 2, Navigating Map Copyright. Let's talk about the rules of engagement. So what exactly crosses the line? The law outlines specific usage actions. If you do any of these things with a protected map, you absolutely need explicit permission from the rights holder. We're talking about the reproduction and extraction of content, editing or modifying it, public distribution, like say printing out physical copies to hand out to a crowd, and public reproduction, which just means sharing it on the internet or broadcasting it in the media. Long story short, if you're interacting with a map publicly in almost any capacity, you are probably triggering a usage action.
Which brings us to a massive misconception. I hear this all the time from digital creators. They think there's this magic loophole, asking, well, what if I take a protected map, drop it into Photoshop, tweak the colors, redraw a couple of lines, maybe delete a few buildings? Doesn't that make it my own unique derivative work? So the crucial point here is no, absolutely not. As Section 23 of the ERGI plainly states, edits or transformations of a work can only be published with the original author's consent. Just running it through digital image processing, tweaking the aesthetics, or tracing over the content does not bypass the original creator's copyright. You literally cannot just slap a new coat of paint on someone else's geographic IP and call it your own. Okay, Section 3, Using Maps Legally. Let's look at how to actually stay compliant. Now, there is an exception for private use, but we need to be really clear about what private actually means here.
Private use strictly applies when only a limited, non-commercial group of people has access to the map. Think along the lines of illustrating a school lesson or internal research at a nonprofit. But, and this is a huge but, simply uploading a map to your own personal website does not count as private use if that site isn't password protected. If the general public can see it, it is a direct legal violation. So if your project falls outside of that very narrow private use box, you've got to obtain a formal license. And this isn't just some casual handshake agreement. You have to formally identify the exact map you're using. You establish yourself as the licensee. You define exactly what the rights and purpose of use are, like explicitly stating it's only for one specific company brochure. Then you agree on conditions, which usually means paying a fee based on your audience size, and you lock in other terms, like the mandatory citation of the source. It is a rigorous process.
Next up, Section 4, the open data alternative. Let's talk about the legal workarounds. Open data is basically the modern, collaborative loophole to these strict copyright laws. It's designed to be freely accessible so you can process and distribute it. But remember, it still operates under licenses. The most famous ones come from Creative Commons. Take CC BY SA, for example. You'll see this everywhere. It means you can freely use and modify the map as long as you do two things. BY means you have to attribute the author, and SA is share-alike, meaning any modified map you create has to be published under this exact same open license. Another absolute heavy hitter in this space is the Open Database License, or ODBL. This allows users to freely share, modify, and use an entire database. It's the engine behind OpenStreetMap, which is essentially the Wikipedia of maps. Because of the ODBL, thousands of volunteers can legally build this incredibly detailed, up-to-date global map that anyone can use for private or even commercial purposes. You just have to play by the open source rules. Finally, Section 5, catching map thieves. Let's look at forensic protection. Look, there is literally an entire industry of lawyers out there whose sole job is detecting illegal web maps. If you get caught, ignorance is not going to save you. First, the rights holder will issue a warning demanding you eliminate the infringement and cease any further illegal actions. If you were negligent, they will come after you for money damages for uncollected license fees, which turns into a brutal legal dispute fast. And here's the real kicker. Just deleting the HTML link on your website isn't enough. You have to physically wipe the map file from your server or you are still actively in violation. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but how do they actually prove I stole their map? Couldn't I just say I drew the exact same streets myself? And this brilliantly illustrates one of the coolest, most ingenious decoy tactics out there, trap streets. Because digital copyright infringement is so hard to prove, cartographers will deliberately plant fake, minor errors into their maps. A tiny street that doesn't actually exist, a subtly altered road sign. If a big tech company suddenly publishes a map featuring that exact fake street, well, the original cartographer has undeniable forensic proof of theft. They literally caught them in a trap. So, to bring it all together, geographic data just isn't what it used to be. It's no longer just ink lines on paper. It's a dense, phenomenally valuable digital asset. The sheer volume of geodata exchanged online is growing exponentially every day. Maps are economic powerhouses driving logistics, urban planning, everything we do. And because they hold so much power and value, the digital landscape requires this intense forensic protection to make sure the creators are actually compensated for their work. Which leaves us with one critical thought to take away from this explainer today. The everyday maps that we totally take for granted, they are laced with invisible legal ink and hidden forensic traps. So the next time you casually right-click to copy and share a digital map for your next public project, ask yourself, is your presentation going to pass the legal forensic test, or are you about to fall headfirst into a trap street? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I will catch you on the next explainer.